And Stu on the mic, broadcasting through the night, talking F1, getting every fact kind of right. From the grid to the finish, they're all in. Top Step Podcast, let the race begin.
Welcome everybody to the latest installment of the Top Step Podcast with Rhyss and Stu, episode 23, post-Hungary race, the racetrack with the best name for a dad joke on the 2025 F1 75 calendar. And of course, as always, I'm Stuart Brown, joined by the best in the business, Mr. Rhyss. Ashmore. How are you, mate?
Good, mate. Good. How are you?
Yeah, not too bad after a very confusing...
Picked your jaw up from
yes,
the ground,
somewhat
from the race.
confronting Formula One weekend. It wouldn't be the lead up to the summer break if some frat house wasn't throwing a party that landed the ugliest person at the school, the hottest chick on the grid. And that's pretty much what happened in Hungary. I don't know how to... If you had to summarize Hungary in one word, could you do it?
Confusing.
Confusing?
Confusing.
Really?
Might be 7 question marks.
Might be the word. Yeah, just a question mark, and that's it. What a
just one of these.
What a race! I realised that last week we didn't talk much about the track, but for a track that has effectively one DRS zone because it's joined after one corner, they're 1 and 2.
And it continues, yeah.
I thought there wouldn't be a lot of passing, but I was terribly, terribly wrong with that understanding. But we'll get straight into it. There's a lot to cover, a lot to unpack from this race, of course. Race ranking coming up towards the end of the show as well. We'll have a look at our predictions. Max Verstappen puts the big Dutch / Austrian / Red Bull heel down on any potential move for 2026. That happened during the week. And of course, our man Frank, whose name is actually Fred, is sticking around at Ferrari. So lots to cover, lots to unpack from the race. Of course, as always, thank you to TikTok's been going berserk. We've had a truck ton of comments. We're very active there, and on YouTube as well. We've had the same thing, and on Spotify too. So jump onto one of those platforms. We still, and I'm going to keep saying it every show until it happens, want to do our interview show live on TikTok. So if you can, jump across there if you aren't already and give us a follow. We would greatly appreciate it.
Yeah, the interaction's been great. The comments have been great. Keep them coming. There's been a few that have really made me laugh. So no, keep it up. And
encourage you where you can to watch the whole TikTok. A lot of them only go for 50 seconds, but clearly with some of the comments, people aren't making it all the way through. Maybe that's our fault.
Here, it's too long.
It's too long.
So, yeah, I did just snip them right down.
Too boring to retain attention. Yeah.
That's it, because we say one thing 10 seconds in, and then that's what's commented on. So I'm here for it.
I get how the famous people, I mean, we are, I guess, I get how famous people feel where their comments are taken totally out of context, because there was some in there.
Completely paraphrasing the middle 10 words of their 30-word speech.
But you know what? Kudos to the huge fan base that we have for equally jumping to our defence.
I had a bit of a pop. I had a bit of a pop in my step after I was reading those. I was like, okay, thanks, Chris.
Well, speaking of pop in steps, it's a perfect segue into qualifying at Hungary, and
talking about hungry, I'm not hungry so much, but I am thirsty.
Thirsty. I always forget. I don't know how I forget this, because we do this at the end of the day.
It's been sitting in my hand. I'm like...
Oh, it's probably gone warm.
I'm like, holding out for it.
The qualifying at Hungary was an interesting spectacle in itself. I had text you at some point, I can't remember which day of the week it was, but probably definitely after qualifying happened anyway, but... and said that for a moment, Lance Stroll was about to mystify the Formula One world. When I tuned in slightly late to Q1, and he was on top of the timing tables with like 4 minutes to go. And I thought, surely this is wrong. Something's happened here. What's going on? But anyway, we digress away from it. Obviously, probably a fairly predictable 5 knocked out in the end of Q1. Sonoda, Gasly, Ocon, Hulkenberg, your man. Alexander Albon, probably the surprise.
That was my surprise. big time, and we'll get into Q2 shortly. But there was definitely people in Q2 that I was expecting to go before Albon. So he was my surprise out of quality.
Yeah, you made a really good point, which I think you're going to do when we start talking about the rest of the performances to me in response to that text message. So we'll bring that up as well. Q2, Behrman Hamilton, obviously a big surprise. Carlos Sainz. Franco Colapinto needs to be noted for out-qualifying Pierre Gasly for the first time. And Kimi Antonelli down in the doldrums in 15th.
It was very close too.
Was.
Yep.
What did you, obviously, Lewis picking up potentially from where he left off at Spa?
Yeah, I was expecting a lot more, and we'll dive into the Hamilton Ferrari files in a few minutes. So stay tuned. But yeah, I was expecting him to come back with a vengeance, if I'm going to be honest, because seeing how he performed at Spa into another track that he's been very, very successful at was disappointing to see, but also very surprising to see. Thought he would have come back with a fire, a bee under his bonnet, if you would.
Yeah, so I mean, speaking of which, Carlos Sainz, of course, outperforming Alexander Albon as well. I think that's the first time that it would be close, if it isn't. Into Q3, the usual suspects. Racing Bulls again probably have to be pretty happy with getting both of their cars into Q3 once again. Obviously, the usual suspect Max Verstappen is in there. George Russell, Piastri, Norris, Charles Leclerc, which put Hamilton's performance a little bit into perspective. But there are three names that we need to focus on here. The first is Gabriel Bortoleto. Now, we probably couldn't have got our predictions of Kick Sauber any further wrong, but we won't be the only ones. They are well and truly batting above their average. And we've spoken a couple of times about how they've been poor at qualifying but had a strong race package. It's the first time we've seen them into Q3.
It's mind-boggling. And if we go back to the start of the year, and when we were talking about Kickstarter, I was disappointed. I was sad. Gabriel Bortoleto is a phenomenal driver, and he did really well in the junior series. And you know my love affair with the Hulk, so I was disappointed that where I expected them to be after last year. So that is a huge turnaround. And kicking it in between an Aston Martin and a Red Bull car in qualifying is wild.
Well, yeah, I mean, you wouldn't have thought that we would say what we're about to say, which is that Lance Stroll has managed to bring it home in P6, just behind Fernando Alonso in P5, which we probably saw at some stage would come.
Less than 4/10 between them, though, which is what absolutely blew my mind. Is that he was that sort of pace.
Well, and there were 2/10 across first through sixth. So, I mean, it was the closest qualifying, I think half a second covered the top 10. It was the closest qualifying outcome for Q3 ever. We've just mentioned Alonso, Stroll and Bortoleto, who all out-qualified Max Verstappen, who qualified in P8.
And just to touch on Aston Martin, the comeback from last week, like having a Spa to forget and then coming back and getting both cars into Q3, whatever they did or whatever, maybe Newey sprinkled some magic.
So that's the Newey juice.
Magic dust on the cars. Whatever they did in that week, it was insane. Whether or not the car wasn't suited to Spa, not sure, but looking at the statistics, you'd probably say that. To then come around and get 5th and 6th in Q3 was a massive feat.
I think that's probably the point, is that the track suits their car a bit better, which should make them excited for the Netherlands coming up after the summer break. So, and then George Russell, 4th, another good solid performance from him, and barely missing out on a front row start. Lando and Oscar 2nd and 3rd, but the surprise packet, of course, is the Ferrari just popping up onto P1, and in the context of qualifying, by a reasonable margin. So, a couple of questions for you then. Obviously, the large gap between Ferrari's is not great, and obviously then the continuation of the downfall of Red Bull.
I'm really, really trying to wrap my head around what's going on at Ferrari. That that difference in pace and difference in qualifying really just, I don't know, alarmed me more than anything. So this is becoming more and more of a regular sort of thing in terms of qualifying pace, and then seeing Max in eighth and then Yuki out in Q1 was, yeah, just trying to wrap my head around those few things. That doesn't really have many answers to it at the moment.
No, so I mean, and obviously it led into an interesting, an interesting race just straight off from the bat of the fact that we've got such a different grid to start off with than we're normally used to, which is really exciting for the sport. But a really, really interesting race, divergent pit strategies and the like. We'll go through the results. Obviously, Lando Norris getting the win. I finished nearly 7 tenths ahead of his teammate Oscar Piastri, who'll be a little bit disappointed with the result. George Russell coming home in third and Charles Leclerc in fourth. Fernando Alonso ending to convert into fifth, with Bortoletto sixth, Stroll seventh, Liam Lawson in eighth, Max Verstappen ninth, and rounding out the top 10, Kimi Antonelli in the point scoring positions. There's a lot to unpack from this race. Where do you want to start?
Do we start? Do we start from the top? I think we just start from the top and we go through, because there's a lot to unpack in those top two.
Yeah, so obviously the start was interesting again for Lando. Charles Leclerc got a ripper start and drove off into the distance, but
2.5 seconds into the distance.
yeah, but the difficulty was that obviously Oscar and Lando had to battle with George. Well, not so much Lando, but Oscar had to battle. Sorry, not so much Oscar. Lando had to battle with George. And Oscar really just sort of treaded water for a little bit there behind Charles, just conserving tyre, I think, more than anything else. And then it really became a waiting game for who jumped into pit lane first and made the benefit of the potential undercut.
And I think it was Max that ended up jumping first, and no one followed.
And it really cost him. Yeah, it really cost him. I mean, and he ended up dropping right back through the field and coming back out in traffic.
Yeah, very, very bad strategy there. But talking about the McLarens, Oscar's start, I think, was quite slow in comparison to Lando, but then Lando sort of boxed himself in with George and sort of left him sitting there like a sitting duck. So do you think Piastri was tyre saving for the majority of that first sort of half of that first stint?
Yeah, I think that they understand at McLaren that they look after the cars look after their tyres better than everybody else. So they know if they stay out of that turbulent air and stay within that sort of probably half a second mark, maybe a little bit more than that, between half a second to a second, that the stint will come back to them, because by the time the people in front of them are going to pit, they've had that advantage of better tyre condition for 3 or 4 laps to be able to make that advantage back up. So there was no point sitting in that hot air. So yeah, I think they do know that, and obviously that played out, I think, throughout the balance of the race with what Lando managed to do with his strategy. So the big question, of course, is partway through the race, Lando ran longer than Oscar did. And Oscar asked if it was possible to run to the end on the tyres he was on, which would have saved him, the 20-second pit stop. And let's quickly mention the McLaren pit stops, which are eye-wateringly quick. 1.94 seconds.
Well, that's what happens when they don't fumble the front left wheel.
I thought it was obnoxious when Ferrari were doing 2 seconds flat. But McLaren just said, finally, as you said, didn't have the issues that they've had in the past weeks with the front left wheel, and just eye-wateringly quick. And they did it for both drivers. So hats off to the pit guys there for getting that done. But Lando asked the question whether or not he could. Oscar asked the question if he could run to the end. And the response, I remember clearly, was, no, Lando, that's not possible.
No, Oscar.
Sorry, no, Oscar, that's not possible. I don't know why I'm doing that now. No, Oscar, that's not possible. So then, obviously, Lando runs a number of laps extra on his strategy and then pits and puts the hard on, and he runs to the end. What do you make of that whole situation? Because of course, Oscar came back at the end of the race, had the pace, potentially could have got the pass done, didn't make it happen. So there was a gamble involved. What do you, given that Oscar was the lead driver at the time, what do you make of it?
I think there's too many variables, and I think, to be fair, I honestly think the information that he was given was correct with the information that they had at hand. So, not knowing, for example, we at that point in the race where Charles still had pace. So if they're looking at actually attacking Charles for the win, then he needs to do two pit stop. He needs to have the tires. He needs to be able to do that. Then I think there's too many variables that changed in between that and then Lando going on and doing the single stint. Charles dropped pace. Like Oscar walked up to the back of him and passed him like he was nothing after the second pit stop. So I think if a few things hadn't have rolled that way, then the call for Oscar to do the two stop was the correct call. Because then he would have had the ammunition to fight Charles. I don't think anyone thought Lando was on for a higher than a fourth finish with running that longer stint until all of the cards fell into place for him. I really don't think anyone, commentators, team, I don't think anyone was looking at him being where he was at that second half of the race. So I think it's the right call from Oscar. And looking now, would you do the same thing again, having the same information? Probably. But not knowing those really sort of messed them up. And I think that's why, as much as I think Oscar was pissed, I think he also understood that as well, because otherwise he would have been a sitting duck for third or fourth.
I think, and I take into consideration that obviously Charles fell away, but I wonder how much, it's not arrogance, but how much arrogance or confidence that McLaren should have had that by the end of the race they would be racing one another. Given how well they look after tyres, would it not have been the way to go to put both of them onto the same strategy, knowing that Lando would need it to hop Charles and knowing how well the car looks after its tyres? And that you're right. I think you're spot on with what you've just said, because it's great in hindsight. But I just wonder if they were thinking, yeah, we're racing Ferrari, when really the whole time they were racing themselves.
Yeah, no. See, if you had have asked me that question before the qualifying, then yeah, absolutely, I would have been like, that's a no, absolute no brainer. But I don't think anyone expected Ferrari to have the pace that it had in qualifying, and then seeing that in the race and seeing him, whether or not Oscar was tire saving or not, but seeing him, 2.5, 3 seconds up the road, both McLaren cars finished 21 seconds ahead of the grid. The rest of the grid, they finished 21 seconds. But at that stage, I still think that the Ferrari was a surprise and they didn't know what was coming.
20 seconds was a pit lane transit, just to put that out there. So, I mean, look, it's interesting. Obviously, Oscar's going to be disappointed, as you said, that he didn't get the win. Lando drove a great race to do what he did again, so that has shone through. He was still struggling a lot. I remember they gave him some advice about pushing wide, but he then wanted to know what was going on through a completely different part of the track where he thought he was losing time. So he still had that sort of panicked voice about him that we've seen.
He drove very composed, but it's the consistency, and we spoke about this last pod, talking about the mentality, and it's the when he's free and clear, he can sort of seem to drive. Obviously, he's not under immediate pressure or anything like that, so he can drive much calmer. But when he's attacking, he seems to make a few mistakes. So he did drive a really good race, and his composure was, compared to what we saw previous weeks when he's trying to do the chasing down, there wasn't as many as those sort of mistakes as what he had made.
No, that's true. So, I mean, and look, out of it all, obviously we've got the meltdown with Ferrari. It's great to have seen Fernando and Lance both score points for Aston Martin.
And jump up in the constructors as well.
Yeah, we'll cover that off in a sec. Gabriel Bortoleto, I should say, third consecutive race now. Third consecutive race points?
Kind of right.
Kind of right.
Results.
Second consecutive race scoring points. No, third consecutive race. He scored points at Spa and scored points before that as well at Austria. So, and kick Sauber.
Second consecutive because he didn't score race. He didn't score points at Silverstone.
Right, well, I just said then kind of
Yes.
right.
Yes.
And kind of right's all that matters. And Liam Lawson as well scoring points. Isaac Hadjar got unlucky. I said it to you when we were doing our usual pre-pod, post-race debrief conversation. Why is it that in the era of you can't race because it's too wet, is there a lot of gravel
Yeah.
on the inside of a corner where no one's going to run off?
Yeah.
That then gets sprayed onto the track and assaults Isaac Hadjar's helmet like he's being shot at. Like, how do these things still happen?
And the cause and effect, like Hadjar got hammered in his hands, and his hands are the highest part. And there's not a great deal of, there's still protective gloves, obviously, but when you're getting hammered by
That doesn't matter at that speed.
200 k's an hour, it doesn't really matter.
Well, and it's probably faster than that because it'll get flicked out of the tyre. So, it's just, I saw that and I didn't get time to look at it, but I'm sure there was a red flag or there was lots of gravel on the track during qualifying, and that impacted on Lewis Hamilton in Q1. So it's just these little things that just shouldn't happen anymore in Formula One just seem to keep happening.
But if they had grass, it would catch on fire. So it's sort of like, what do you...
Well, just put concrete there, and just tell the drivers if they get their wheels off, they're not going to crash, so get their wheels off the thing, and then you get a penalty.
And there's so many circuits, like more modern circuits that have that. So, just fix it.
Mm. Excuse me, yes, so cost Isaac a little bit, but he drove well. Kimi Antonelli up 5 places and getting into the points as well, so a good recovery drive from him of sorts in his finish. Williams will be disappointed again with their weekend, and I think probably everyone else, excluding Oliver Behrman, finished where they probably deserved to finish. So in terms of the Formula One world title, it closes the gap somewhat at the top going into the summer break. I saw McLaren were happy with themselves that they're still on top in both. If they're not on top in the Constructors' Championship by the end of the season, something is wrong. But Piastri maintains his lead by on top, I should say. He maintains his position, but loses a little bit of his lead down now to just 9 points on top of Lando. So that's gone down 3. I thought it was cute that George Russell in the debrief suggested that Oscar should have just run into Lando on the last lap, and that would have been good. George with the jokes. It would have only been good for George. I can't imagine that McLaren would have been too happy with Oscar had that happened.
Their only rule, don't run into
each other. But you know what? Oscar wasn't happy, but still didn't sort of break out like everybody thinks he would do, having a temper tantrum or whatever they call it. Max maintains third, but loses a huge chunk to George after he finished third in the race. So Russell closing in on him, but still in fourth. Charles Leclerc is in fifth, 151. Hamilton still sixth, despite his trials and tribulations, with Kimi in seventh, highest ranked rookie still. Albon still managing to hang on to the top 10, along with the Hulk, and somehow Ocon is still there, but not much, not by much.
There's only a point now with between him and Alonso and Stroll, so it's only time will tell.
Yeah, some sort of normalcy has been restored to the fact that that almost Fernando is ahead of Lance in terms of the drivers' standings. Team standings, look, no real changes there whatsoever in terms of the order, other than Aston Martin jumping up into sixth.
Jumping up over Kick Sauber, which still Sauber in seventh is mind-boggling to me if we go back 6 months ago. But I do want to point something out to you. at Mercedes and Ferrari, the gap between those two teams.
Yeah.
So, excuse me, remembering last year that Ferrari and McLaren were the ones, battling for the constructors. Now it's, I think with what we're seeing, I think we're going to see Mercedes jump Ferrari very, very soon into that second spot.
I think it depends on whether or not they fix these heat reliability issues that they've had with the engine. Because, of course, Mercedes probably should be a lot further ahead. Kimi's had a couple of bad weekends. It's good to see him get back into the points again. And, of course, Ferrari, they've been able to stay there or participate more in the Constructors' Championship because despite Lewis struggling, he still managed to finish in the points. So
Yeah,
both cars scoring
still
points.
picking up those small points.
But this weekend, not the case. And of course, Charles would have been hoping to bank a lot more than he ended up doing. So it's an interesting one to watch. It is rapidly becoming a 3-horse race because, even Max came out, which is a little sad to see, and said he'd be surprised if Red Bull managed to finish on the podium or win a race for the rest of the season. I think he said win a race, actually. I don't want to get that wrong, but I think he said to be surprised if Red Bull won a race for the rest of the season. And given the position that their second car is in, I still see them falling. If Williams get their act together, or if Aston Martin get their act together, I still see Red Bull finishing 5th or 6th in the constructors. It can happen,
which will massively hurt that business.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Aston Martin jump up, kick Sauber, only 1 point behind them. Racing Rules only a few points behind them. So, and look, it's still not over for Haas as well. Ollie's been unlucky. He's been knocking on the door and just hasn't managed to get things through. So hopefully, while they're over in the summer break, and of course we go to America in the second half of the season again. So, their quasi-home race, all of them. So, hopefully they can sort of improve a little bit themselves and make that contest for that 6th through 9th position a little closer. So there you go. An interesting one.
Yeah, it was very, very interesting with lots of stuff that I'm still trying to process.
So we've we'll come back. I think we'll bring up Rhyss Ranksome now, given that we've just covered the race. Then we'll have a little bit of a chat about Ferrari's implosion. Yeah. And then we've sort of we've rapidly rattled through everything tonight, but and we'll see what else comes out of that. So let's hop into Rhyss Ranksome.
So starting from bottom to top this week. So obviously beginning with the DNF, his quality position was the same as sort of has been finishing. So he's just that weekend now. I am going to smash a few together. So Pierre Gasly, Colapinto, Tsunoda, Ocon, Albon, and Sainz I've all given big old Fs to. I didn't... Tsunoda, understanding he started from pit lane with some changes. I didn't even notice that he was there, that he turned up for the race. It sort of jostled around a little bit when everyone was pitting that you saw the other cars. But I'll go through. Sainz should have a grip on the car now. So something's not okay. Either the car doesn't have the performance because we're seeing Albon drop down as well, or he's not meshing. But something should have clicked by now. So Fs from Sainz down. Hulkenberg, I've given a C+ to, and he's gone from 19th to 13th. But I expected a little bit more, seeing Bortoletto up there in 6th, and it's no longer the car isn't able to do it, because we can see the car can actually do it. So C+ for the Hulk. Hamilton, I've given a D to. There's just understanding he was trying to avoid a collision with Max, and that's not really why I've given him a D, but he shouldn't be where he is, unless, again, something's going on with the car. But seeing where Charles was, should have been there. Hadjar, I've given a B to. I think he drove a really, really good race, and I actually think that the fact that he continued on the race after getting pelted with stones was a pretty good feat.
Yep.
So I've given him some bonus points there. Antonelli and Max have both given a C to. And I'm getting quite harsh on Antonelli because my expectations of him have changed dramatically. Lawson, I've given an A. I could not give Lawson an A this week. He was the highest scoring Red Bull car.
Yep.
So I had to give him
God.
some props for that.
Who would
Which
have
is
thought? Who would have thought we would have been saying that with him in a racing bull?
a crazy sentence to say. Lance Stroll, I've given an A to as well, which was I had to double check my notes this morning after the race, but that was a phenomenal turnaround from Stroll. Bortoletto, an A plus. That was a fantastic drive from Bortoletto, and highest rookie in probably the slowest car, or what was the slowest car, and least expectation. Leclerc, I've given a C to. Now, I'm not sure that the reason behind the drop in his speed come down to a legit chassis issue, but we will speak about that in a minute. Russell, I've given an A because he was just kind of there and picked up some pieces.
Just for the joke at the end, I think.
Yeah, that's it. Piastri and Norris, I've given both A pluses too. I think given the strategies they were both given to, they drove as well as they could have. And that, my friends, is another week of Rhyss Ransom.
Yeah, not as confronting for me this week, mate. I think you pretty much got it right, as is our tune. So
the parameters are changing, so I'm getting consistent.
Little generous for the Hulk. I'm just going to say a little generous for the Hulk, but we'll allow that. We'll allow some fan favoritism. That's all good. You led into it. Let's talk about Ferrari. Let's talk about, so first and foremost, let's talk about the decision to re-sign Fred. Thoughts?
No, I don't have any thoughts. I can't, it frustrates me. I can't see the higher-ups in Ferrari going, this guy has spent a substantial amount of money this season and he's going to deliver less than what he did last season. And I can't see why they would stick with that. I just can't.
My biggest issue with it is that I don't know who else would be any better. And I still don't think, and which leads into the next few bits and pieces, I still don't think that he's the issue. I think that the underlying issue at Ferrari is, as I said to you earlier today, that you've got a Frenchman, an Englishman, and an Italian all in the team trying to communicate. And that is what's broken about the team is just the communication. If they can fix the communication, they'll fix the team.
Yeah, as soon as you said about Fred, I thought, hang on a minute. Yeah, no, you are right, because at what point is the wrong in the team, and that's probably communication is a big one. Can we talk about Leclerc's meltdown whilst racing, and then before we dive too much deeper into that, the turnaround after he'd had a chance to speak to his team privately, what he said to the press, what he said to the media?
Yeah, well, I mean, yeah, go for it, because if you haven't seen it, we will post it on our socials as well. He said, "This is so incredibly frustrating. We've lost all competitiveness. You just have to listen to me. I would have found a different way of managing those issues. Now it's just undrivable. It's a miracle if we finish on the podium."
And this was the race leader saying this sort of thing on the radio. But then when he came to the press, and this is where I'm sort of going to tie in this whole Fred question as well. Who's actually calling the shot sort of thing at the team? Because this is what he's saying mid-race. But then as soon as he came to the media and did his media requirements, his tune had completely changed. He said, "Oh, it actually wasn't this. I didn't realize that I had chassis damage." Now, if in the past, when we've seen these cars take chassis damage, it has been a big shunt. It's been air over the sausage curbs. It's been a big impact. What caused chassis damage on his car?
Yeah, I don't know. And we saw Ollie Behrman get chassis damage, and the communication was, you've got, I think it was rear diffuser damage, and your aero is down 1% on normal. And that came across the broadcast. They showed that. So hence what led me to this communication issue, because how does Charles not know that?
Yeah, and that's what I'm meaning. So if we're talking about the issues in the team and where they're stemming from, is it Fred that's not telling because you're sitting there, he's sitting there and he can see all the data. Is he not feeding this to tell his drivers? Like, is the engineer not doing it? But then on the other side, if Fred's your manager, for example, and your assistant manager is not telling your team what to do, then there's a chain of events. So is Fred not saying, "Hey, we need to tell Charles what's wrong so that he can do this"? You haven't told him that, and he's not picking that up.
Yeah, I don't know. I wonder if some of it comes from their inherent protectiveness of information. And so because it's all broadcast now and it's so visible that they just refuse to share information with their drivers that can be seen by other teams. But when you've got issues such as they've had and they've then finished 40 seconds behind the lead, obviously with the penalty as well, um, it doesn't matter. Like if you've got chassis damage, you're going to get caught out anyway because you're not going to be as quick. So fine are the margins in the sport that you're just going to get caught anyway.
So this is the part that I'm really trying to connect all of the communication, because if your driver, lap 39 leading the Grand Prix, says, we're not going, I'm going to lose the race now because of this. So he's already saying that there's an issue that's getting broadcast everywhere. Wouldn't you say to him, like, hey, this is what's wrong. This is what you need to do. Whether or not you need to take curbs differently, corners differently, accelerate, brake differently, whatever it is. He's already said at lap 39 of a 70 lap race. Was it lap 29? Anyway, early in the race, that he's going to lose it now with these issues. Wouldn't, as a team, go into management mode and go, all right, mate, it's not this, it's that? Because he spent the whole race just pissed off.
Well, yeah, I mean, it. I don't know. It backs off a Q2 exit where Lewis came out and basically said he's useless, and that it's not the car, but that it's him. And so, again, he had a working relationship with Bono at Mercedes, which he clearly doesn't have with Ferrari at the moment. And these things take time to, obviously, they work together for a long time, along with him and Toto. So these things take time to produce relationships and results and communication styles and stuff. But that's what started me down the track of its communication. They've just got a communication issue. And I don't know if it's because Ferrari, as I said, are so cemented in their ways that it's never an issue with what the team is doing. It's always an issue with what the driver is doing. And that they just can't get out of the way of themselves. And until they do that, until they have a breakthrough with a champion, like you can't have imagined this was going on with Schumacher there. Different dynamic, different staff, and all that sort of stuff, of course. But when the team was run when Schumacher was there, this stuff didn't happen. But here, there's a massive disconnect between the drivers and the team. And if I were Fred, I'd be pulling Charles into a room and giving him a clip. I'd be saying, mate, you're an employee of Ferrari. You do not, and I'm not big on the whole. It's a Ferrari, so therefore you can't say anything. But do not come out on the radio again and react like that, because you are in a Ferrari, you're in a top team, and you've got to think, and I know that you're racing, and I know there's heat in the moment and all that sort of stuff, but if we haven't told you something, it's either because we don't want to tell the world, or maybe we don't know. But if
I don't know yet. Yeah.
but if we know, we're going to tell you. But you can't have an outburst like that. In the same way, they came out and I didn't see the press release, but they did come out and put out a press release about both of their drivers and their communication with the worldwide forum after this weekend. And I mean, again, I didn't see, and I should have watched it beforehand, I didn't see the context of the question that Lewis got asked before he said he's absolutely useless. But obviously he's being flippant there because he's probably sick and tired of being asked the same question over and over again about him meshing with Ferrari.
I'm going to be honest, he's broken. I've never seen a man like Lewis look so defeated. And we know how Lewis races. We know how passionate he is. And seeing his response to, the what was your expectation, and how do you think he went, and are you still having issues with the car, for him to turn around and say that, it's taken half a season, but I think Ferrari may have broken his brain.
Well, next season will hopefully turn it around for him, because it's the car as it is now is just not working for him. It's obviously
And
not how he likes it.
and yeah, it's so. If you're a Hamilton fan or not, he's the most successful driver on the grid and the most successful, current Formula One driver. He not deserves, because everyone earns the right for a win, but if this can't be the end of Hamilton.
No, and I'm with you. Like I'm not a Hamilton fan, but the sport would be poorer for him not being in it by a long way. I love the fact he's on the grid. I love the fact that when he's competitive and Max and that whole dynamic, I obviously I absolutely loved as a fan. So um, it'll turn around for him. This won't be the finish. You know what? If it doesn't work, I'm sure there's clauses in his contract for him to get out. And there'll be other teams that would be chomping at the bit to have him come and drive for them. So, and I think for him to get to the stage where he's at now of being sarcastic with the press is a Lewis Hamilton we've never seen or haven't seen before. Uh-oh. Wow. Okay. What have you got? This is good. This is ad hoc. What's going on? You've got that foil hat back on.
Can you hang on a second? Can you imagine Lewis Hamilton and Valtteri Bottas racing at Cadillac?
No, I can't. I think your foil hat's off the dial. There's no way he's going to Cadillac. He's signed $1 billion contract with Ferrari. There's no chance.
Hey, you said clauses to get out. I just thought...
There are, but there's no way. There's no way he's going to Cadillac. You're not getting out of a Ferrari into a Cadillac. Like, you're just not. You're just not. That's
it is the worst team name, just to be honest, because Cadillacs aren't a sports car.
That's like going from working at Coca-Cola and then you're over there just doing cola, like the home brand kind of thing. Like there's no way that's happening. He's not headed to Cadillac, and there's too many good options. Cadillac will get a much cheaper option into their car than having to pay out Lewis Hamilton. So maybe Charles.
Going from a Ferrari to a Cadillac Escalade.
It's just, yeah, no, definitely not. So look, what I was enjoying is that I think we're probably reasonably well known for talking about Red Bull a lot. But we've just spent 20 minutes dissecting Ferrari, which is great. So hopefully you've all enjoyed that. But they have to fix it. I think re-signing Fred is actually a good thing for continuity. I think they, like the Carlton Footy Club, need some changes in the people making the decisions, not necessarily in the people running the shop. And you know what? You know who they do need to change? I think they actually need to change Lewis Hamilton's race engineer as well. If I were Fred, I'd be going and trying to steal Bono for as much money as I could.
He did get offered. It was rumours that he was offered to come with Lewis, because that would be the combo that you would want.
Yeah, why wouldn't you roll up start with that? No time to build a relationship, understands the language, how you like the car.
I do believe that he offered option to stay at Mercedes, but to my knowledge, facts kind of right type stuff, he was offered to come with Lewis. And I guess when you're throwing that much money at a driver, if the driver says, hey, I want my race engineer.
Yeah, what's another mil or two here?
Correct, yeah. So I think he was opted to stay at Mercedes. And to be honest, if the engineers talk more than the race drivers in terms of the team themselves, what some of the stuff that last season would have said about Ferrari and the strategy, if you were Bono, you'd go, no thanks. I'll stick here.
Yeah, 100% you would. Yeah, absolutely. So just quickly, the last thing before we wrap up the show for another week and give you a little bit of a preview of what's coming up over the mid-season break. We did mention that Max Verstappen has put his foot down. He is staying at Red Bull. Now, This is probably where I would have expected you to crack out the tinfoil hat. This just stinks of misdirection, smoke and mirrors type stuff. We don't know, and I don't think anyone really knows, what the clause was in his contract around the position, title contention, and the like at Red Bull at this particular point in the season. He is sitting third in the championship, which I understand is the trigger point. He had to be below that. So he's there. Is he there forever? As I said, contracts can be broken if they really want them to be. So, what do you think? Do you think it's Toto and I can pull our boats up next to one another and nothing can, people can be friends? Do you think it's just we're sick of talking about it? Let's put the bosh on it until towards the end of the season when things get sillier. George still doesn't have a new contract, by the way, so there is still a vacant seat technically next season at Mercedes.
Well, it definitely smells like, it seems like smoke and mirrors look this way while we do this. And I was always much of the thought that not a lot of the stuff that happens in the Formula One world happens behind closed doors. But what happened with Christian Horner was a complete blindside. No one. I thought that would have happened, 18 months ago. I thought everything was in the clear now. I thought he was where he was, and obviously him going was a complete blindside. So I think there might be some stuff happening behind closed doors, whether or not that's just talking about the future. And we've touched base on it before, but we talk about his Max Verstappen's GT3 racing and things like that. So whether or not he was having a conversation with Toto in regards to a car for the GT3 team, like we just don't know.
No, that's true.
So yeah, I think there's something happening there, but whether or not it's Formula One related, when obviously Mercedes have their hands in so much motorsport, in terms of what they can do and what they can build, whether or not what part of Max Verstappen is talking to Toto about racing, I'm not sure.
Well, I guess only time will tell.
We did say last show when we were dissecting it, like we did say at the end, like we expect Max to just come out and say I'm staying at Red Bull and George gets signed, like it's all going to go away. So yeah.
Yes, I wonder if they'll sign George for a year on the basis that they might want to make some changes thereafter. We have got, as I said, for those of you who are new to Formula One, if you're not aware, this is now the mid-season break, so everyone gets some time off. They're actually banned from working on the cars during this period of time. It is an enforced period of annual leave for the teams, from what I understand.
I did not know that. I thought this is when all the big upgrades and stuff came through.
Yeah, I think it's the travelling parties more than anything else. You might remember that there were accusations thrown around that Red Bull were working on their cars, or Toto was working on his car during the period where there was supposed to be a holiday. So there are enforced restrictions around it to try and give everyone a break, because of course they do 3 weeks of traveling and then only get a week or 2 off and then do another 3 weeks, and so it's pretty full on. And then we head to one of the best places to go for racing, which is Zandvoort, one of the OG Formula One tracks from 1952, and that is on the 29th of August. So equally a little bit of a break for us from talking about work, talking about racing specifically. But we have been doing some work, which is what I meant to say, around a mid-season review, which will be coming up to you next week. And then we're going to have our 2026 calendar show, which we've been teasing with for the last few weeks. And then Red Bull decided to fire Christian Horner and wreck our plans. So we've still got that one in the works. So we will bring that over the 2-week break.
Zandvoort is
can't wait.
Just touching thing on that. And anyone that isn't familiar with the track, go and check it out. It's very much like Spa, where the banking angle at Zandvoort does not look anywhere near as aggressive on the broadcast than it will when you have a look at photos or close-ups of the track. If you punch Daniel Ricciardo Zandvoort into YouTube, I think it comes up with he did a track walk where he's walking with his hand up on the bank.
It did.
It's a
Yeah,
very,
that was cool.
very cool video. But that was it was a couple of years ago now. But
that was when he broke his wrist.
Yeah, it was before. Yeah,
yep, just before that.
So
or his hand.
The bank angle is insane. I think it's like 19 or 20 degrees. I could probably...
Yeah, I think, and I'm going to go ad lib here, I think it's the second steepest banking in Formula One tracks other than Monza.
I think do the same thing. I think it's similar to a NASCAR speedway banking.
Yep.
Which is crazy
with
the grip and everything like that. So if you haven't seen the Zandvoort layout, go and check it out. Go and check out the bank angle because it really doesn't look like much on the broadcast.
So that's what's coming up from us in the next 2 weeks. So keep an eye out for that. We will be aiming to drop the pods on the usual Tuesday morning Australian time zone, along with all of the content in between. If you haven't already and you've managed to make it this far, do give us a follow or a like or a subscribe, depending on where you're watching or listening. It does help the algorithm. Our enthusiasm will never wane, but it helps the algorithm and gets us towards that goal of doing the live broadcast for the final round of the season. We may even do it live during the race, but we'll see how we go with family and lives and things outside of Formula One that give us the time to do this. So that is, I think, it for the Top Step for another week. Thank you for tuning in. Hopefully you got something out of it. Drop some comments. As always, we're really enjoying engaging in the commentary around what we say, and particularly when we get called clowns. That really gets me going. So bring it on, champions. We'll get back to you when we do. But anyway, now I'm blethering. So
I was going to say, I thought we were trying to get people to follow us, and then you just drop champ.
Drop champ on everyone.
We've lost everyone.
Whoops, sorry about that. But that is it for another week of the Top Step. Of course, I am Stuart Brown.
Rhyss Ashmore.
And we will see you next time.
See you.
Well, that's a checkered flag. We're at the end of the race.